Back in my accounting days in London, I regularly prepared reports that summarized monthly data into quarters. Back then, we used the sum function with Boolean logic, which worked fine. But Microsoft 365 users now have a better way to do it with the dynamic array functions like bycol and byrow. However, trying to write the formulas using these functions was mind-bending and made me question whether I was even deserving of my MVP award. More on that in a moment. Let's start with the sum formula version, which everyone can use, and then I'll take you through my journey with bycol and byrow. The data I'll be using is in a horizontal layout with the months going across the columns and the items going down the rows. Accountants love data in this horizontal layout, but it can make things in Excel complicated. If your data is in a vertical layout, you'll find the equivalent solutions in the example file for this lesson that you can download from the link in the video description on the sheet called vertical data. I should point out that the dates in row 4 are proper date serial numbers, as you can see in the formula bar. I've just formatted them as month year because it looks nicer in a report. Now I want to sum the values for the first item, so we're going to use the sum function and select the values for the first row, and I'm going to F4 3 times, and that's just going to absolute reference the columns so that when I copy the formula across and down, the rows increment but the columns stay fixed on C to N. Now I only want to sum the columns for the first quarter, so I'll use Boolean logic to identify those months by multiplying them by the rounded up month numbers. So here I want to reference the dates in row 4, F4 to absolute, close month. We divide them by 3 and round them to 0 decimal places. And what this does is it finds the quarter number for each month. If I select that formula there, you can see it evaluates. So the first 3 months are quarter 1, the next 3 are quarter 2, and so on. Pretty clever. Lastly, for the first cell, I only want the first quarter's month added up. Now I could put equals 1 here as my logical test, but that 1 is then hard keyed, and I want to be able to copy this formula across and have it automatically update. So let's replace that with the column function. And what this does is simply returns the column number, and if I want 1 returned here, then I can select column A. That's going to give me 1, and as I copy that across, I'm going to leave it relative so that column A will become column B, which will return 2, and so on. Let's just step through the formula to see how it evaluates. First of all, column returns 1. My roundup formula returns the quarter numbers, and if we check what quarters match column A's result, which is 1, we get the first 3 months return true and the rest return false. Now when we apply a math operation to Boolean true and false values, they convert to their numeric equivalent of 1s and 0s. So when we multiply our quantities for components, it's going to multiply 9 by 1, 5 by 1, 4 by 1, and the rest by 0. So what we get, let's select them all, is an array of the first 3 values and the rest are 0, and sum simply adds them up. So all I need to do now is close parentheses on sum, press enter, and there's my result. That is the sum of the first 3 values. And now I can copy it down and across, and I'm done. Now, this is okay, but we can improve it with the let function. And let just enables you to name variables inside the formula, making it easier to write and make sense of when you come back to this formula in a few months' time. Trust me, it's worth the effort. So let's go up to the formula bar, and I'm just going to Control-Shift-U to make it bigger. We're going to Alt-Enter down onto the next line so I can type in let, Alt-Enter again, and I name my first variable. First one is the quantity, that's the values in the table, which is this reference here. Let's cut it out and place it in there, comma, and now instead of referencing the cells here, I can reference the name that I've just defined in my let. Okay, next. I want to define the variable for my months. Let's call them MTHS for short, and that's this reference here. Control X to cut it out, paste it in, and then down here I can just type it in. And notice it's appearing in the autocomplete here, so I can just tab to select it. Next we want the quarters, and they're found with the roundup function. So cut that out, paste it up there. And in here now we can reference the name. And lastly, we want the current quarter, which is returned by using the column formula. Cut that out, paste it up there. And then in here we can say current quarter. And so all we're left with is a really simple formula that reads in English quite well. So we're summing the quantity where the quarters equal the current quarter. And I'll Alt and Enter, close parentheses on let, press Enter. Now the results don't change because the formula is still fundamentally the same. All we've done is make it easier to read and interpret when we come back to it in a few months' time. Now if you're still unsure how this formula works, in the file that you can download from the link in the video description, you'll find the individual steps broken out so you can work through it one by one and piece it all together. Okay, that was the old way to sum monthly data into quarters, albeit with the newer let function bringing it a little up to date. And it works just fine, except you have to copy the formula across and down manually. So I set about writing a dynamic array version available to Microsoft 365 users with the bycol function. You can see here the formula uses the same approach of the previous formula with roundup and month to find the quarter numbers, and then it spills the results. Nice. Except I still have to copy it down the rows. Not so nice after all. So I spent some time trying to modify the formula to also spill to the rows. Just when I thought I knew what would work, it didn't, and I was back to the drawing board. I continued to bang my head against the formula brick wall for what seemed like days, questioning my formula skills, which I thought were pretty good until now. Eventually I gave up and I reached out to the two most incredible formula writers I know, Sergey Backlin and Peter Bartholomew, to see if they were up for the challenge. Of course they were. In fact, they were so up for it, they provided me with a total of 8 different formulas. Some of these formulas were immense, and I didn't feel so bad that I couldn't figure it out. I spent the weekend poring over their formulas, trying to understand them. Quotient. Who knew that was a function? What? I know how to have fun. While no single formula is best, I've chosen one to explain in this video because it's relatively straightforward and incredibly useful. Okay, without further ado, let's take a look at Peter Bartholomew's formula. Peter's formula uses the new array shaping functions tocol, wrap cols, wrap rows, bycol, byrow, lambda, and hstack. If you're not familiar with these functions, you'll find links in the video description to more detailed tutorials. I'm going to start using let again. So Alt Enter onto the next row. And I'm using the same example data. And the first variable I need to define are my quantities. And this time I'm selecting the whole table because we're writing one formula that's going to spill to the rows and the columns, comma, Alt Enter. Next is to arrange the values by quarter, and we'll call this arrange by quarter. And we're going to use wrap cols with tocol to unpivot the quantities and rearrange them into vertical columns of 3 rows each. That is each quarter pivoted into a column of 3 values. So here tocol converts the quantities into a single column and wrap col rearranges them into vertical quarters that look like this behind the scenes. Next I need to sum the total quantities by quarter. So we're going to call this list quantity by quarter. And here bycol is going to pass the arranged by quarter table that we created in the previous step, and it's going to pass that to lambda. We'll call that variable x just to simplify it. Lambda is simply going to sum x. So it's summing the values that are arranged by quarter. Close sum, close lambda, close bycol, comma, and Alt Enter onto the next row. Behind the scenes, bycol is giving each column in the wrap cols array to sum to generate a single array of quarter totals. So now I can arrange the quantity by quarter with wrap rows. Wrap rows is going to take the list quantity by quarter, the previous step, and it's going to wrap it into 4 columns, 1 for each quarter. Now behind the scenes, it's preparing a table like this with the quarter totals for each item stacked. And we could stop there, but Peter has taken it one step further and added the total column as well. And we can do that with H-stack. So Alt Enter onto the next row, taking the previous step, quantity by quarter, and then appending it to another calculation that we used by row to achieve. So by row is taking the quantity by quarter, passing it to lambda, and lambda is simply going to sum the values to get the total column, which H-stack then joins to the previous table. So close sum, close lambda, close by row, close H-stack. And then Alt Enter onto the next row, we'll just close our let and press Enter. And ta-da! The table spills to the rows and the columns. Amazing. One formula, and notice we also have a total column. I encourage you to also download the example files for this video from the link in the video description. Check out the other formulas in more detail because there are lessons to be learned from experts like Peter and Sergey that extend beyond the formulas themselves. I've also included a written explanation for each formula in the files so you can follow along. Plus, I had one last challenge for Peter, and that was to write a formula that would allow for more columns and more rows to be added to the table without having to edit the formula. It would just automatically pick them up, which he did. You'll find it on the tab called vertical in his file. You can see here it uses the mysterious quotient function. So check that out as well. Now, if all those formulas are hurting your head, then you'll be pleased to know there is a much easier way using pivot tables, which you can check out here. And finally, a huge thank you to Sergey and Peter for their generosity in helping me with these formulas. Be sure to thank them in the comments. Thanks for watching.